So one of the talking points we have heard out of the Republican Party ever since Donald Trump lost the 2020 election is how unfair our elections are, and they've been wanting to try to change things to make it better. And for the most part, they haven't really done anything to change anything except small changes at the state level, which have had an impact, changing how voting works, changing early voting access, things like that. But now Marjorie Taylor Greene has a new idea that she thinks is going to save U.S. elections. Now, what is this idea? She wants to require the U.S. Census Bureau to conduct a new census 5 years early and force all states to redraw their congressional maps. Now, this would be based off this new census, but the census would only be asked of U.S. citizens. Now, that's already a thing that happens every 10 years when we do the normal census. That there's a question on there about citizenship, and I believe that was put there by Donald Trump himself after a fight that made it to the Supreme Court. Now, her plan would make it so that states would have to redraw their district maps accordingly based on U.S. citizenship populations, and states that have high undocumented immigrant populations or potentially even just non-citizen populations like green card holders, etc., would get less representation, and it would go to places with more citizens. This would be a logistical nightmare to get pulled off. Not to mention, it would be very costly. We already budget for it every 10 years. They would have to fund this somehow. And of course, they would probably want to do it through cutting some other assistance program to people. But they want to do this, is what she's going to try to do. Now, there's no guarantee it would pass. But it could backfire because some of the states where people are undocumented, or even they're, like I said, with green cards, etc., could get less representation. Now, this reminds me of how at the beginning, when we formed the country, there was the 3/5 compromise where the southern states got 3/5 of their slave population counted as people when it came time for the census, but they also couldn't vote, they couldn't own land, they couldn't do anything. They wanted to count them as people for population purposes to give them more power, but they wanted to count them as less than for everything else. Now, in this case, she wants to not count anybody but citizens and try to redistrict that way. They're trying to game the system again because they can't win any other way. They can only win if they adjust the districts so Democrats don't have a chance, and this could backfire, and I also don't think it's got a good chance of passing.